The sky over Washington, D.C. turned purple on a quiet Tuesday morning in 2047. People stopped in the streets and looked up as the massive ship descended through the clouds. It was sleek and silver, shaped like a teardrop, and made no sound as it hovered above the National Mall. News cameras captured the moment when the ship's underside opened and a beam of soft blue light touched the ground. Through this light, the first aliens to ever visit Earth arrived. The creatures that stepped onto human soil came in two main types. The first were tall and covered in green scales that shimmered in the sunlight. They had long necks and narrow faces with vertical pupils and golden eyes. These were the Vexeri. Besides them stood beings that seemed to be made of translucent crystal. Light passed through their bodies and split into rainbows on the other side. These were the Luminari. Within hours, the president called an emergency meeting with world leaders. Alan Wright, a respected diplomat known for his calm under pressure, was chosen to speak for humanity. Alan had gray at his temples and steady hands. He had handled peace talks in war zones and trade deals between bitter enemies. Now he faced the greatest diplomatic challenge in human history. "We come in peace," said the lead Vexari, whose name sounded like clicking glass when spoken. The universal translator they provided rendered it as Solus. He bowed deeply. "We represent the Galactic Council, a union of 27 spacefaring species. We have watched your world for some time and believe you are ready to join us among the stars." The offer seemed too good to be true. The aliens promised to share medical technology that could cure most human diseases. They offered faster-than-light travel systems and clean energy. In exchange, they asked for cultural exchange, trade rights, and one unusual condition. "Humans must agree never to participate in galactic warfare," said Solus. His scaled face revealed no emotion. "This is non-negotiable." Alan frowned. "You mean we can't have a space military? You may defend your own planet and solar system," explained a luminary named Zell, whose voice sounded like wind chimes. "But humans must never fight in conflicts between other worlds or species. You may not serve as soldiers, mercenaries, or even military advisors beyond your system." When pressed for reasons, the aliens became evasive. Solus would only say, "It is for the greater good of galactic peace." Some world leaders were suspicious. Why single out humans? Other species obviously participated in these conflicts. The Russian president suggested refusing the terms, but the benefits were too great to ignore. After a week of tense negotiations, Earth's governments agreed to the treaty. Alan signed his name on a strange tablet that seemed to record his genetic signature rather than just his writing. The day after the signing, smaller alien ships arrived carrying scientists, diplomats, and teachers. They set up cultural centers in major cities and began sharing their knowledge. Alan was appointed to lead the new Department of Galactic Relations. In his first meeting with Solus after the agreement, he tried once more to understand the warfare restriction. "Is there something about humans that concerns you?" Alan asked as they walked through the new alien embassy in New York. Solus stopped walking. His long tail swished once across the polished floor. "Your people are unique," he said carefully. "We believe it best if that uniqueness is directed toward peaceful endeavors." "That's not a real answer," Alan said. The Vexeri's pupils narrowed to thin lines. "No, it is not. Perhaps one day you will understand. For now, be content that we considered your species worth saving from itself." Alan watched Solus walk away, reptilian feet clicking on the marble. He couldn't shake the feeling that the aliens were hiding something important. Something about humanity that frightened even these advanced beings who had mastered the stars. Outside the embassy window, a luminary ship glittered as it rose into the sky. Earth was entering a new age. But Alan Wright couldn't help wondering what price they might ultimately pay for their place in the galaxy. 10 years passed since the aliens first landed on Earth. The world had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Shiny buildings with strange curves now stood in every major city. People traveled in floating cars powered by clean energy. Doctors used alien tools to heal sicknesses that once killed millions. Earth had become part of something bigger than itself. Olivia Carter stood at the window of her office on Centauri Prime, the massive space station that served as the Galactic Council headquarters. The Earth woman adjusted her blue diplomat uniform and watched the stars. At 35, she had never thought she would live somewhere other than her home planet. Now she represented humanity to 27 alien species. "Ambassador Carter, the Krell delegation has arrived," said her assistant, a young man named Daniel. Olivia nodded and turned from the window. She walked down the curved hallway where aliens of all types moved about their business. Some looked almost human. Others had too many limbs or eyes, or were made of materials no human would think could live. She noticed how they looked at her. Most were polite, but she caught the quick glances, the whispers behind hands or claws or tentacles. 10 years of working with aliens had taught her to read their body language. They were curious about humans, but also careful around them, almost afraid, though they tried to hide it. The meeting room had a round table with seats made to fit different body types. The Krell were insect-like beings with hard outer shells and many jointed legs. Their leader, Zix, clicked his mandibles in greeting. "We thank you for your time, Ambassador," Zix said through his translator. "The border dispute grows worse. The Vexeri claim the mining moon belongs to them, but it has been Krell territory for generations." "I understand your concern," Olivia said. "The Council wants peace. Perhaps we can find a solution that works for both sides." As they talked, a news alert flashed on the wall screen. Fighting had broken out in the disputed area. The Vexeri had sent ships to block Krell miners from reaching the moon. 3 Krell vessels had been damaged. "This is outrageous." Zix's antennae quivered with anger. "We must respond with force." The door opened, and a human man in civilian clothes entered. Olivia recognized Greg Mason, a former soldier who now worked as a trade representative. His gray eyes took in the situation quickly. "Ambassador, I heard about the conflict," Greg said. "I have experience with similar situations from my military days. Perhaps I could offer some strategic advice." Before Olivia could respond, an alarm sounded. A luminary council member named Kell glided into the room, light refracting through her crystal body. "Ambassador Carter, Mr. Mason." Kell's voice rang like bells. "The council demands your presence immediately." In the Grand Council chamber, representatives from all 27 species sat in rising tiers. The head counselor, a Vexeri named Mav, fixed Olivia with his golden eyes. "Earth has violated the terms of our agreement," Mav said. "Several human military advisors have offered their services in the border dispute." Olivia frowned. "They're only offering advice, not fighting." "The treaty is clear," said another counselor. "No human military involvement of any kind beyond your solar system." "This seems extreme," Olivia argued. "These are former soldiers, not active military. They're only trying to help." "The ruling stands." Mav's voice was cold. "All humans with military backgrounds must return to Earth immediately. Additionally, the Council imposes trade restrictions until your government acknowledges this violation." After the meeting, Olivia found Greg in the station's garden area. He sat on a bench surrounded by plants from a dozen worlds. "This makes no sense," she said. "Every other species serves as military advisors or peacekeepers. Why are humans singled out?" Greg looked up at the artificial sky. "I've been wondering that for years. Something happened that they're not telling us." Olivia made a decision. "I'm going to find out the truth. Whatever it is they're hiding about humans, I'm going to discover it." "That won't be easy," Greg warned. "But I'll help however I can." Olivia nodded, her mind already working on a plan. The real reason humans were banned from warfare was buried somewhere in the Council's history, and she was determined to dig it up, no matter what she might find. Olivia found the Galactic Archives at the lowest level of Centauri Prime. It was a vast room filled with glowing data crystals that reached from floor to ceiling like strange trees in a digital forest. Few people came here. Most preferred to access information from their quarters or offices. But Olivia knew that the most sensitive data was kept offline, stored only in these ancient crystals. An old luminary named Zenith worked as the chief archivist. His crystal body had dulled with age, the once bright rainbows now pale and faded. He moved slowly between the data towers, touching them gently with his fingertips. When he saw Olivia, he made a sound like chimes in a soft breeze. "Ambassador Carter, an unexpected pleasure." Zenith's voice tinkled. "Most humans find our archives boring." "I'm looking for information," Olivia said with a smile, "about humans and warfare in galactic history." The light inside Zenith flickered, a sign of nervousness among luminary. "That is restricted information. Council clearance level 7 is required." Over the next few weeks, Olivia visited Zenith daily. She brought him rare foods from Earth that the old luminary had grown fond of. She shared stories of human history and art. Gradually, his crystal edges softened toward her. "You remind me of someone I knew long ago," Zenith said one quiet afternoon. "Another human who asked many questions." This caught Olivia's attention. Another human, before first contact. Zenith's light dimmed. "I have spoken too much. Please," Olivia touched his cool crystal arm. "I need to understand why my people are treated differently." After a long silence, Zenith led her to a sealed section behind a shimmering force field. He pressed his palm to a scanner, and the barrier faded. "You have 30 minutes before the security system resets," he whispered. "Look for file cluster 7729 alpha. I was never here." The crystal in this section glowed with a red warning light. Olivia found the cluster Zenith mentioned and placed her hand on it. Images and words flooded her mind through the direct neural interface. The records were damaged and incomplete. They spoke of an incident 500 years ago involving an unregistered species that had been temporarily allowed to assist in a defensive action against a hostile race called the Void Walkers. The results were described only as catastrophic and disproportionate. A notation indicated that this species must never again be allowed to participate in galactic conflicts. Olivia dug deeper. A fragment of a report mentioned a lost colony in a system called Erebus. The colony had been established by an early exploration mission, forgotten to Earth's records, but discovered by Council scouts. When the security system began to pulse, warning of imminent reset, Olivia quickly withdrew from the interface. Her head pounded with the rush of information. She found Zenith waiting outside the restricted area, his crystalline form trembling slightly. "The unregistered species," Olivia said quietly. "It was humans, wasn't it? From a lost colony." Zenith's light dimmed to almost nothing. The Council believed it better that Earth never know of its lost children, or what they did when asked to fight. "What happened?" Olivia pressed. "I cannot say more." Zenith's voice was barely audible. "But ask yourself this. What would make 27 spacefaring species, many with histories of violence and conquest, agree unanimously that one particular species must never be allowed to fight?" That night, Olivia sent an encrypted message to Greg Mason. She explained what she had discovered and asked for his help to investigate further. The response came within minutes. "Meet me at Docking Bay 12 tomorrow at 400. Bring only what you need. We're going to find answers." As she packed a small bag, Olivia looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was a place called Erebus, where humans had once fought a battle so terrible that the memory of it still frightened the galaxy. Whatever her ancestors had done, she was now determined to uncover the truth. Greg's ship was small but fast. The former soldier had modified it himself, adding stealth features that weren't exactly legal. With him came Diane Lee, a tech specialist with short black hair and quick fingers. She had once worked for Earth's defense forces before joining the diplomatic corps. "Erebus is in a restricted zone," Greg explained as they left Centauri Prime behind. "No ships are allowed there without special council permission." "Then how are we getting in?" Olivia asked. Greg smiled. "Let's just say I know people who know people." 3 days later, They approached a small rocky planet orbiting a red dwarf star. From space, it looked dead and empty, but as they flew closer, Diane's scanners picked up signs of a settlement on the far side. "It's definitely human," she said, looking at her screens, "but the technology is odd. Like ours, but different. They've been developing on their own for centuries." They landed in a valley a few miles from the settlement. The air was thin but breathable. Low, twisted trees with purple leaves dotted the landscape. The three humans wore plain clothes to avoid drawing attention. As they walked toward the settlement, Olivia noticed small drones circling overhead. "Council monitors," Greg said quietly. They watched this place constantly. The settlement was a collection of dome-shaped buildings connected by covered walkways. People moved about their daily business, looking mostly like humans from Earth, but with slightly paler skin and eyes adapted to the dimmer sunlight. An older man approached them, his face suspicious but curious. "Visitors. We don't get many of those." He studied their faces. "You're from Earth, aren't you?" Olivia stepped forward. "Yes. My name is Olivia Carter. This is Greg and Diane." "Frank Taylor," the man said, "elder of New Hope Colony." He gestured for them to follow him. "You'd better come with me before the monitors report your presence." Frank led them to his home, a comfortable dome with furniture made from local wood. Once inside, he closed the shutters and activated a device that hummed softly. "Scrambles the Council's listening devices," he explained. "We're not supposed to have this technology, but we manage." Olivia explained their mission, about finding the truth behind the human warfare ban. Frank's face grew serious. "So they still keep that secret?" He sighed. "Our ancestors were sent out from Earth in 2112, before faster-than-light travel was perfected. They were in suspended animation for almost a century before landing here. The colony was forgotten by Earth, but the Council found us about 500 years ago." "What happened?" Greg asked. Frank walked to a hidden panel in the wall and removed an old metal box. "At that time, the galaxy was being terrorized by the Void Walkers. No one could stop them. The Council came to us, asking for strategic advice. They thought humans might have fresh ideas." He opened the box and took out a small device that projected a holographic image of humans and aliens standing together. "Our ancestors agreed to help. The Council only wanted them to plan, to advise from a distance. But when the Void Walker fleet attacked the Luminary homeworld, our small group of advisors did something unexpected. They asked to fight." Frank's voice grew softer. "The Council was desperate, so they agreed. They gave 20 of our people, just 20, access to their ships and weapons. They thought, what harm could 20 humans do? They had seen the battles our people fought on Earth and thought they understood human warfare." He closed the box carefully. They were wrong. Olivia leaned forward. "What did those 20 humans do?" "They showed the galaxy what real war looks like," Frank said. "And that's why humans are banned from fighting. Not to protect the galaxy from us, but because of what happened after." "After?" Diane asked. Frank nodded grimly. "After other species saw how humans fight, everything changed. But to understand, you need to see it for yourselves. We kept records hidden from the Council. They're in our underground archive. I'll take you there tonight, when the monitors are less active." As darkness fell over the colony, Olivia wondered what could have been so terrible that an entire species would be banned from warfare for centuries. When night fell over the colony, Frank led Olivia, Greg, and Diane through a series of underground tunnels. The walls were lined with old pipes and flickering lights. They walked for nearly 20 minutes before reaching a heavy metal door. "The Council doesn't know about this place," Frank said as he pressed his palm against a scanner. "We've kept it hidden for generations." The door slid open to reveal a small room filled with ancient-looking computers and storage devices. In the center stood a simple table with a projector. "These are the records of what our ancestors did," Frank explained. "The Council tried to destroy all footage of the battle, but our people kept copies hidden. Diane helped Frank connect the old storage device to the projector. After a few minutes of technical adjustments, a holographic image appeared above the table. The recording was grainy and sometimes glitched, but clear enough to follow. It showed a massive space battle. The Void Walker ships were black and spiky, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They moved in perfect formation, attacking with cold precision. Against them were the colorful ships of various council species, fighting bravely but clearly losing. Then the recording zoomed in on a small group of ships marked with the symbol of the human colony. There were only 20 of them, tiny compared to the massive fleets around them. "Watch," Frank said quietly. The human ships didn't move in formation. Each one seemed to act independently, yet somehow as part of a larger plan. They darted between the massive Void Walker vessels, attacking in ways that made no sense at first. "They're drawing fire away from the council ships," Greg noted, his military training helping him see the strategy. But it was more than that. The humans were using tactics that the other species hadn't considered. They set traps. They feigned retreats. They sacrificed ships to gain advantages. The council species fought wars like games of chess, Frank explained. Calculated moves, acceptable losses, clear objectives. Humans fought like humans. The recording showed a human commander, a woman with fierce eyes. "This is Captain Eliza Carter," she said into the camera. The name made Olivia gasp. It was her ancestor. "If you're watching this, it means we've gone ahead with Operation Last Resort." The footage continued, showing the human ships driving the Void Walkers toward a gas giant planet. The council ships, following the humans' lead, formed a blockade that prevented escape. "They trapped them," Diane whispered. But the worst was yet to come. Captain Carter's ship, damaged and barely functioning, flew directly into the heart of the Void Walker fleet. The recording showed her face one last time. "Sometimes to win, you have to be willing to lose everything," she said calmly. Then she pressed a button. The explosion was enormous, triggering a chain reaction through the gas giant's atmosphere. The entire planet seemed to ignite, consuming the Void Walker fleet completely. The recording ended. The room was silent. That was the first time the council species had seen a human willing to sacrifice themselves to win, Frank said. It shocked them. "But that kind of self-sacrifice happens in wars on Earth all the time," Greg said. "Soldiers throw themselves on grenades to save others. Captains go down with their ships." "Exactly," Frank nodded. "What seemed extreme to them was normal to us. But that wasn't what truly frightened the galaxy." He switched to another recording. This one showed council ships fighting against a different enemy a year later. To Olivia's shock, they were using human tactics, feints, traps, and even suicide runs. "After seeing humans fight, other species began to copy us," Frank explained. "Wars that once had formal rules and limited casualties became total conflicts. Death tolls rose by thousands. The Council realized that humans hadn't just helped win a battle, they had fundamentally changed how the galaxy fought wars." Olivia stared at the frozen image of her ancestor's face. "So they banned humans from warfare to prevent this from happening again." "Yes," Frank said. "But now, the Void Walkers have returned. And the galaxy may need humans again, despite the risk." The journey back to Centauri Prime was tense and quiet. Each person on Greg's small ship was lost in their own thoughts about what they had seen. Olivia kept thinking about her ancestor, Captain Eliza Carter, and her final moments before sacrificing herself to save the galaxy. When they arrived at the space station, they found it in a state of high alert. Security had been increased, and military vessels from various species were gathering nearby. "Something's happening," Greg said as they docked. "And I don't think it's about us." Olivia went directly to the council chambers, bringing the evidence they had collected. She had made copies of the battle footage and the records from the human colony. As Earth's ambassador, she had the right to request an emergency meeting with the full council. The great circular room was already filled with representatives from all 27 species when Olivia entered. They fell silent as she walked to the center of the floor. The head counselor, Mav, looked down at her with his golden Vexari eyes. "Ambassador Carter," he said coldly, "you have been absent without permission. There will be consequences for—" "I know the truth," Olivia cut him off. "About humans and warfare. About what happened 500 years ago." A murmur ran through the chamber. Mav's scales darkened, a sign of anger in Vexari. "You have accessed restricted information," he hissed. "Information that should never have been hidden from Earth," Olivia replied. She held up the data crystal containing the battle footage. "I have evidence that humans were banned from warfare not because we're dangerous fighters, but because of how we changed galactic warfare itself." Mav looked at the other council members. After a moment of silent communication, he nodded. "Show us what you have found." Olivia plugged the crystal into the central display system. The battle footage played for all to see, the 20 human ships fighting the Void Walkers, Captain Carter's sacrifice, and the later footage showing other species adopting human tactics. When it ended, the council chamber was completely silent. "Is this why we were banned?" Olivia asked. "Not to protect the galaxy from humans, but to protect the galaxy from becoming like humans." An old luminary counselor rose slowly. "Yes," he said, his voice like distant bells. "Before humans showed us, warfare in the galaxy followed strict rules. There were acceptable targets and unacceptable ones. There were proper times to retreat and surrender. Deaths were limited. Victories were measured in territory gained, not enemies destroyed. Then humans came," added a Krell representative, his insect mandibles clicking, "and showed us that war could be different, that it could be total, that victory could be worth any cost." "You don't understand," said the Vexari Supreme Commander as he stepped forward. His military uniform was decorated with symbols of rank and honor. "Before humans showed us, we didn't really know how to kill each other." Olivia looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each species' representatives. "So you banned humans to prevent us from teaching you more about war?" "Yes," Mav admitted. "After that battle, conflict across the galaxy changed. Species that had observed human tactics began using them. Wars that once lasted days with minimal casualties now stretched for years with millions dead. It was horrifying." "The ban was not a punishment," said the luminary counselor gently. "It was meant to preserve something precious that humans had lost long ago, the ability to fight without destroying everything." Suddenly, alarms began to sound throughout the station. A Krell officer rushed into the chamber, his exoskeleton clicking as he moved. "The long-range sensors have detected them," he reported urgently. "The Void Walkers have returned. A massive fleet is moving toward populated systems." Mav turned to the emergency displays. They showed a vast armada of black, light-absorbing ships moving steadily through space. There were hundreds of them, far more than in the historical footage. "They've evolved," the Vexari Supreme Commander said grimly. "Our standard tactics will be useless against them." All eyes in the chamber slowly turned to Olivia. "We need humans," someone said quietly. "No," Mav shook his head. "The ban exists for a reason. If we allow humans to fight again, we risk returning to the dark times. If we don't," said the Krell representative, "there may not be a galaxy left to protect." The emergency meeting of the council lasted for hours. Reports came in from all sectors of the galaxy as the Void Walker fleet advanced. 3 outer colonies had already gone silent. The defenses that had protected galactic worlds for centuries were failing against the evolved tactics of the ancient enemy. "They've studied us," the Krell military advisor said. "They know our standard formations and responses." Olivia watched the faces of the council members grow more desperate with each new report. The proud Vexari, the wise Luminari, and the logical Krell, all were afraid. "We need to request Earth's help," Olivia said finally. "Not just strategic advice. We need human soldiers." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some council members supported the idea out of desperation. Others opposed it, fearing the consequences. "Have you forgotten what happened last time?" a Vexari counselor shouted. "Do you want to return to the century of blood that followed?" Mav raised his clawed hand for silence. "Ambassador Carter, if we allow humans to fight, can you guarantee they will not change us again? That the galaxy will not fall back into the darkness of total warfare?" Olivia thought carefully before answering. "No," she said honestly. "I cannot guarantee that. Humans fight differently. We always have. But I can promise you this, without human help, there may not be a galaxy left to protect." After more debate, a vote was called. By the narrowest margin, the Council agreed to temporarily suspend the ban on human warfare. "There will be strict limitations," Mav insisted. "Human forces must follow Council guidelines. No extreme measures without approval." Olivia nodded, though she wondered if such restrictions would work when actual fighting began. Messages were sent to Earth immediately. President Summit Hill received the news with solemn understanding. Earth had been preparing its defenses against potential threats since joining the galactic community. Now those forces would be called to protect not just humanity, but all sentient life. Within days, a fleet of Earth ships departed for the front lines. Admiral Paul Rodriguez, a veteran of Earth's last major conflict, led the human forces. His flagship, the UES Defender, carried the most advanced weapons humanity had developed. Before leaving Earth orbit, Rodriguez addressed his crews. "We fight not just for humanity today," he said, his voice calm and determined. "We fight for all intelligent life in the galaxy. They fear our methods, but they need our courage." When the human fleet arrived at the defensive line, alien commanders watched with a mixture of hope and anxiety. The Void Walker forces had pushed through 2 more systems, leaving destruction in their wake. Admiral Rodriguez studied the tactical displays that showed the enemy's advance. The Void Walkers moved with a hive-mind precision that made their attacks devastatingly effective. "They've adapted to counter the standard Council tactics," he observed, "but they've never faced modern human warfare." The alien commanders had prepared a battle plan following their traditional approach: defensive formations, gradual engagement, and careful resource management. Rodriguez listened politely, then offered his own strategy. "We need to break their cohesion," he explained, "split their forces, disrupt their communications, and attack from multiple angles simultaneously." The Vexari commander, with scales the color of burnished copper, looked uncertain. "Such aggressive tactics risk high casualties. Sometimes you have to risk everything to save everything," Rodriguez replied. When the Void Walker fleet entered the system, they expected to face the same predictable defenses they had already defeated multiple times. Instead, they met something entirely different. The human ships didn't maintain neat formations. They attacked in seemingly random patterns, targeting unexpected weaknesses. Earth vessels deliberately took damage to create opportunities for allies. Human pilots flew missions that alien commanders considered suicidal, but that somehow succeeded. On the bridge of the UES Defender, Rodriguez directed the battle with calm intensity. "Show them what humans can do," he told his crews. "Show them why we were banned." For the first time since their return, the Void Walkers were forced to retreat from a system. The combined fleet, human and alien together, had achieved what had seemed impossible. But this was just the beginning. The main Void Walker armada was still advancing deeper into the galaxy, and Admiral Rodriguez knew that winning this war would require more than just clever tactics. It would demand the one thing humans had always been willing to give: everything. 3 weeks of fierce battles followed the first victory. The human fleet, working alongside alien allies, pushed back the Void Walkers in system after system. Admiral Rodriguez's tactics spread throughout the combined forces. Alien commanders who had once looked at humans with fear now watched and learned. But the Void Walkers adapted quickly. They studied human strategies and developed countermeasures. The losses on both sides grew heavy. For every system reclaimed, Hundreds of ships and thousands of lives were lost. The final confrontation came at Luminary Prime, the crystal homeworld of the luminary species. The Void Walkers sent their main fleet, over 1,000 ships strong, to destroy this symbolic target. If Luminary Prime fell, the morale of the entire galaxy would crumble. The combined defense fleet waited in orbit around the shimmering planet. Human ships flew alongside Vexeri cruisers and Krell swarm vessels. Admiral Rodriguez's flagship, the UES Defender, had been damaged in previous battles. Scorch marks covered its hull, and several weapon systems were offline. On the bridge, Rodriguez looked at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy. "This is it," he said to his crew. "They've committed everything to this attack." Olivia Carter was also on the bridge, serving as liaison between human and alien forces. "The Council is watching," she told Rodriguez. "They're still afraid of what will happen after the war, if we win it." "Let's make sure there is an after first," Rodriguez replied. The Void Walker fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a dark cloud blotting out the stars. Their ships had evolved further, with new weapons and defenses specifically designed to counter human tactics. The battle began with a fury unprecedented in galactic history. The space around Luminary Prime lit up with weapons fire and explosions. Ships on both sides fell by the dozens in the first hour. Rodriguez led from the front, the UES Defender taking on 3 enemy capital ships at once. The human admiral had developed new strategies that even the Void Walkers hadn't anticipated. He coordinated with alien commanders who now implemented human tactics with their own unique abilities. But it wasn't enough. The Void Walkers were too many, too determined. Their black ships pushed closer to the planet, breaking through the defensive lines. On the Defender's bridge, a massive explosion threw everyone to the floor. Warning lights flashed everywhere. "Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, reported an officer, blood running down her face. "Engines at 20%. Weapons failing." Rodriguez pulled himself back to his command chair. He looked at the tactical display one last time. The pattern suddenly became clear to him, a weakness in the Void Walker formation that hadn't been visible before. "They're focused on destroying. We're focused on saving," he said quietly. "That's the difference." He opened a channel to all ships in the combined fleet. "This is Admiral Rodriguez. I'm sending a new battle plan to all vessels. Implement immediately." The Defender was falling apart around him. Another explosion rocked the ship, knocking out more systems. "Get to the escape pods," Rodriguez ordered his bridge crew. "That's an order." Olivia helped injured crew members toward the escape section. She looked back at the Admiral, who remained at his post. "What about you?" Rodriguez smiled sadly. "Someone has to transmit the battle plan and make sure it's implemented. Go." As the escape pods launched from the dying ship, Rodriguez sent his final strategy to the fleet. It was unlike anything he had tried before. A complex dance of retreat and advance, sacrifice and salvation. Patterns within patterns that no single ship could see, but that created an unavoidable trap when executed by hundreds of vessels working together. The Defender, barely functioning, flew directly toward the center of the Void Walker command ships. Just before impact, Rodriguez sent one last message to all ships. "Remember, the greatest warriors aren't those who fight without fear, but those who understand the true cost of fighting at all." The explosion of the Defender was just the beginning. As Rodriguez had planned, it triggered a chain reaction through the enemy fleet. The combined forces, following his final instructions, closed the trap around the disorganized Void Walkers. 3 hours later, it was over. The enemy fleet was destroyed or in retreat. Luminary Prime was saved, and with it, the galaxy. In the aftermath, on Centauri Prime, a memorial was built. It showed a human hand and an alien hand clasped together. Below it were the words of Admiral Rodriguez, carved in stone from a dozen worlds. And beside them, a new addition to the galactic law. "Humans shall not participate in warfare except in times of greatest need, when they shall be the galaxy's last and most feared resort."